Hey guys, Jordan Arell here, making another video on circumcision trauma healing. And today I want to talk a little bit about something that I discovered on my own journey and that I think can be really helpful. It's not so much an exercise as it is just something to be aware of. So, when this kind of came up for me is after the first 2 years maybe, I've been researching circumcision almost every night after I found out about it. And then at one point I started to get really upset about it. Like, it was increasingly kind of bad over that time period, but relatively stable, just gradually getting worse, and then it really just accelerated and got worse a lot more quickly. And so at that time I was following a lot of groups on Facebook, a lot of intactivist groups. I was watching different videos, reading about circumcision pretty much every night, and watching videos of circumcision, watching a lot of pornography that had guys with foreskin in it, and at that point I realized that it was starting to harm me to watch all of these things. And this was before I really had a framework of why, but what I realize now is that a lot of those things were triggering for me, meaning that they activated certain emotions in me, certain feelings and thought patterns that I would habitually kind of get into, and it was almost it was so intense whenever I would do any of those things that it was actually almost re-traumatizing in a way. And that's what triggers do. It comes from the Vietnam War vets. When they'd hear a trigger, it was like literally hearing a trigger. It takes you back to that moment and feeling like it's happening to you almost at that moment. And it can be the same thing. It feels like you're finding out about circumcision all over again, or like you're actually experiencing it again. And so what I had to do at that point was to start to look at the groups I was following and unfollow or not watch the videos, or not go on to the sites that I was used to going on, because all of those things were really making the trauma a lot worse, and just taking me deeper into this hole, into this depression, and I couldn't handle it. It's actually about the time that I also developed PTSD, and excuse me, I discovered what I ultimately had to do was stop basically with all of the material that I was doing. And even then I could only semi sort of repress all of it, but at least it was not as bad as it had been when I stopped just looking at all of this material that was so activating for me. And so I did that for a while, for maybe a couple years. I was not following anything, and except for Foragin was the one group I was still following, because they didn't give a lot of updates, and they're really just a ray of hope for me. So that was kind of a different case. But then finally, when I did start doing healing work and started to feel a lot better about things, I noticed that I could start to go on those sites again, or read books, or do intactivist activities and things, and it wasn't so bad as it had been. And gradually now I'm doing a lot of that stuff all the time, and it's not traumatic for me anymore because I've worked through it. But it took first, not doing all those things for a while so that I could focus on just healing and going into it slowly, sort of at my own pace, step by step, and rather than, just deep diving into it every night and being super traumatized every time I would read about it, I would just go into those places in my mind and in my experience of it very slowly and experience what I was able to, and then just stop for the day and then go into a little bit more the next day. And gradually I was able to experience all of it and stop being so upset about it. But there were some things I didn't go into right away, and it really took being intentional about it in that way. And so my recommendation here for people who have been looking at a lot of material around circumcision and intactivism and reading about it, or looking at pornography associated with it, with foreskin, or all sorts of other things that can be really upsetting if you are circumcised and are upset about having that part of your body cut off, then what you want to do is start to look at those groups, look at those different things, look at different activities that you do around it, and notice what you feel when you are doing those activities. Are you able to stay calm? Are you able to, come at it from a logical place? Are you able to stop and, or is it kind of obsessive? Is it just pulls you in and you feel like you can't do anything about it? And at some points in someone's sort of obsessive epiphany, you may find yourself not wanting to stop reading because you're still learning a lot and you're trying to understand it. And I'm not saying you have to stop if you're still trying to learn about it, but you may want to be careful how you go about it. But for everybody, I think at some point there comes a point when you know a lot about it, like way more than any human being ever needs to know about it. And at that point, you don't have to just keep on researching circumcision. You don't have to keep reading forums and watching videos and doing all these things. Is really harming you if it just keeps on pulling you into that depression and you're not really learning anything new, or it's just kind of horrifying you in different ways, and you already understand the issue. So I would say just go through, look at all of the different things you're following, if it's on Facebook, or what kind of videos you're watching, what do you type in Google search and look at, and if those things are just upsetting you like that, then just try stopping for a little bit. Just say you're not going to do it for a week or for maybe 2 weeks, and see if you feel any differently. And then from this point, it becomes much easier to start to work on the trauma, start to approach those things very slowly, and really feel all the feelings around it, and separate out your feelings from the compulsive need to continue looking at more material or respond to people who are talking about it online. And the healing process is just allowing yourself to feel those feelings, to encounter those things, and to be exposed gradually to what is triggering to you, But you don't even have to actually go on any of those sites or look at things online. Most of that you can find inside you. You just have to bring those things to mind and then start to feel those feelings, start to become comfortable with being able to feel those and not be totally triggered and drawn into that hyper-arousal state of trauma. And so for everybody, there's different ways of doing this, different paces, and figure out what's right for you. This is my advice of what worked for me. I definitely needed to temporarily divest from all intactivism, and ultimately that helped me a lot to, in the long run, be able to work with all of those things more. So just consider this as an option. See how you feel when you're looking at things. One other thing I'll say is that there's always the option of looking at things in a more conscious way. So if you're looking at circumcision related material online and you find yourself getting triggered and really upset, then you can work with that in the moment as well and take a step back, step away from the computer and just sit with that feeling. And like in the other exercises I've given, just allow yourself to feel that, send love to that part of yourself, be willing to experience it totally, and just be patient and sit with it until it starts to transform and change. And it can take a while of doing that with a number of different things, but after doing it for just a couple weeks, you'll notice that you are able to respond in a very different way when looking at material related to this online, because you start to change that pattern in your brain and in your behavior of automatically just reacting. If it's someone online who you're talking with who's maybe more ignorant about the issue, rather than reacting and being angry or coming from a very emotional place, you can be much more logical and much more effective at changing people's minds if you're willing to do this and just feel those feelings and sit with it and not automatically react, but really give yourself time to process it and gradually work more and more through these feelings. So I think that's it for today, guys. Trying to see if there's any other tips I have on this particular subject, but nothing's coming to mind. So if you have any other questions on divesting from intactivism, anything I didn't cover on this issue, or your other opinions or thoughts on it, I'd love to hear it. Just leave me a comment below. Otherwise, I will make another video for y'all tomorrow. Thanks for watching.